The desert had been merciless that summer, the kind of blistering heat that turned even the cactus brittle and made. The sky looked like a sheet of burning brass. Ethan Cole, a widowed rancher with little left but a few cattle and a stubborn will to survive, trudged across his land searching for a missing mare when he saw a figure stumbling through the shimmer of heat. At first, he thought it was a coyote dragging an injured leg, but the closer he got, the more he realized this was no animal. This was a girl, a giant of a girl, nearly 6 feet and built like someone carved from sun-baked stone. Her braids were long, black as river rock, and her eyes half closed as if she hadn't had a drink in days. She collapsed onto her knees near the fence line, hands trembling, breath rasping like dry leaves. Ethan hesitated, not because she frightened him, but because he recognized the beaded bracelets on her wrist. Apache. And an Apache wandering alone this far from her people meant trouble, the kind that echoed through valleys for miles. Still, compassion overruled caution. He knelt beside her, lifted her head gently, and pressed a canteen to her lips. The girl flinched, warrior trained even in weakness. Yet something in Ethan's steady gaze eased her fear. She drank, slow at first, then desperately, water dripping down her chin. She whispered a single word, hoarse and heavy with gratitude. Tala. Ethan didn't know her language, but he understood her tone well enough. He nodded, helped her sit against a fence post, and offered the last of the canteen. She took it, eyes softening. For a moment, the desert felt quiet, sacred. Ethan stood unsure what came next, but Tala placed her palm over her chest and then touched his hand, a gesture of thanks, or maybe a promise. Before he could ask her anything, distant hoofbeats trembled through the ground. She stiffened, alarm flashing in her eyes. Ethan turned instinctively, scanning the horizon, but saw nothing. When he looked back, Tala was already moving, limping quickly toward the mesquite trees, vanishing into the copper-colored dusk as if she'd never been there. He watched her disappear, a strange unease curling through him. Ethan had survived droughts, fires, outlaws, but something in the silence after she left felt heavier than any storm he'd faced. As he headed back home, canteen empty and mare still missing, he had no way of knowing that by morning, the simple kindness he'd shown would summon a fate no white rancher had ever witnessed. With breath still in his lungs, the next dawn crept in with a strange, pale fog that rolled across Ethan's ranch like the breath of some ancient beast. The horses in the corral snorted nervously, hooves scraping the dirt, while Ethan sipped coffee on his porch, already troubled by the memory of the Apache girl. Something about the way she'd fled like a hunted animal kept clawing at him, but nothing prepared him for the scene that unfolded as the fog thinned. Shadows appeared first, tall silhouettes on horseback, then the faint clink of metal and the eerie silence of disciplined riders. Ethan set down his mug, heart beating hard. The fog peeled away, revealing warriors, dozens, then hundreds. Apache, painted faces, braided hair, feathered lances, rifles slung across backs. They spread across his land like ghosts from another world, quiet, controlled, deadly. His blood went cold. There had to be 300 of them. At their center rode a man taller than the rest, shoulders draped in a coyote skin mantle, iron-gray braids swinging with every step of his powerful stallion. His eyes were sharp as obsidian, spears and fixed straight on. Ethan's hand twitched toward his holster, but he froze when he realized none of the warriors raised weapons. They simply surrounded him, encircling the ranch in a perfect silent ring. The leader dismounted, every movement calculated, a man who commanded without speaking. When he stepped forward, Ethan recognized something familiar, the same beaded pattern that had been on Tala's wrist, but larger, more ornate. Her tribe, her family, her blood. The chief stopped several feet away, planting his spear into the earth like a flag. Ethan forced himself to meet his gaze. The chief's voice was deep, resonant, and carried the authority of wind-shaping canyon walls. "You gave water to my daughter." Ethan blinked. Daughter? The giant girl? Before he could react, the chief raised his fist, and the entire army thundered their spears and rifle. Stocks against the ground, a sound like thunder ripping open the sky. It wasn't a threat. It was a salute. Ethan swallowed hard as the chief continued. Among my people, to save the life of a chief's child is a bond of honor that must be answered. The warriors' circle tightened, not in aggression but in ritual. Ethan lifted both hands slowly, stepping off the porch. I didn't know she was your daughter, he said, voice steady despite the fear twisting his gut. I just saw someone who needed help. The chief nodded once, slow and deliberate. Then today, rancher, our people stand for you. Ethan felt the world shift under his boots, a moment suspended between danger and destiny. Fate had knocked on his door, not with guns, but with gratitude. The warriors held their formation with the discipline of a living wall. Yet not a single rifle pointed toward Ethan. The chief raised one arm and the ranks parted just enough for a rider to emerge, Tala. She rode a dapple-gray mare, straight-backed despite the exhaustion etched into her posture, her tall frame imposing, but her expression softer than the day before. When she dismounted and stepped toward Ethan, he realized something unsettling. She wasn't just tall. She was powerful, built like someone trained since childhood, to spar with warriors and hunt across mountains. But today she looked almost shy, hands clasped in front of her. You saved me, she said, her voice a mixture of pride and humility. Ethan nodded, unsure what to say. The chief's booming voice cut through the still air. My daughter was returning from a scouting rite. Outsiders, ranchers who steal Apache land, chased her. She would have perished without your water. Ethan stiffened. There had been violence recently along the borderlands, settlers pushing deeper, conflicts erupting like brushfires. He didn't want any part of it. But fate apparently had other plans. I didn't do it for reward, he said. I did it because she was in trouble. The chief's stern face softened a fraction. Among our people, such acts bind families. Ethan blinked. Families. Tala's cheeks flushed, but she remained silent. The chief stepped closer, lowering his spear. You are now under our protection. Until the debt is balanced, Ethan felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. Protection sounded good. But debts in Apache culture ran deep, entwined with honor, blood, and tradition. What exactly does that mean? Ethan asked carefully. It means, the chief said, our warriors will guard your land. But it also means you have agreed, whether you wish to or not, to stand with us when you called. Ethan's breath stalled. He was a rancher, not a fighter. But 300 warriors weren't asking his permission. Tala stepped forward suddenly, placing a hand on her father's arm. He is not ready, she said gently. Let him understand our ways first. The chief studied Ethan for a long moment, then nodded. Very well. You will come to our camp before sunset, alone. With that, he mounted his horse, raised his spear, and the warriors peeled away in perfect formation, leaving only Tala behind for one lingering second. She met Ethan's gaze with a strange intensity, as if trying to memorize him. Do not refuse the chief, she warned softly. Then she swung into her saddle and galloped after her people, leaving Ethan standing on his porch, heart pounding. He had saved a life, and now a nation had stepped onto his land. Whatever day he thought he was going to have had been replaced entirely by destiny's rough hands. By late afternoon, Ethan saddled his horse and rode toward the crimson horizon, where the Apache camp shimmered like a mirage. Every instinct told him this was madness, ride into the midst of 300 warriors who could end him in a heartbeat. But something deeper urged him on, respect, curiosity, and the haunting memory of Tala's eyes, which held both centuries of tradition and a flicker of something unspoken. The camp was massive, arranged in circles around a central fire pit, with hides stretched between poles and the smell of sage drifting through the air. As Ethan approached, he felt hundreds of eyes on him, some curious, some hostile, some merely watchful. 2 warriors intercepted him but did not touch him. They simply escorted him to the center. The chief waited, seated before a fire, weapon laid across his lap. No aggression, just authority. Tala stood beside him, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Ethan dismounted slowly. The chief pointed to a seat opposite him. Ethan obeyed, lowering himself onto a woven mat. Do you know why you're here? The chief asked. Ethan shook his head. Because you have entered the story of our people, the chief continued. And stories demand truth, bravery, and consequence. Tala stepped forward, addressing the gathering crowd. This man saved my life. I was pursued by men who wanted Apache land, men who carry rifles and greed. A murmur rippled through the warriors. Ethan felt the shift. Some now softened, others still coiled like arrows in a bow. The chief lifted a bowl of water and extended it to Ethan. Drink. Ethan hesitated, then took a sip. The chief nodded. Now the spirits know your name, and now you owe us honesty. Ethan swallowed hard. I want no part in war. I just wanted to help someone who needed it. The chief studied him. War will come whether you want it or not. Those who chased my daughter have marked your ranch. You stand on land they wish to claim. Ethan froze. What? Tala stepped closer, lowering her voice. They thought I was a scout, your scout. They will come for you next. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. The chief leaned forward. You saved my child, rancher. Now we will save you. But you must stand with us when the time arrives. Ethan felt trapped between two worlds, neither fully his. Yet he also sensed the desert shifting around him, as if whispering that his quiet life had been an illusion all along. Outside the circle, warriors lit torches. Inside, Ethan lifted his gaze and accepted a truth he could no longer outrun. The storm was already coming. Ethan returned home under a sky bruised purple, the desert wind carrying the scent of smoke and anticipation. His mind reeled with everything he'd learned. Someone had chased Tala, someone had marked his ranch, someone wanted blood and land, and Ethan had been unknowingly placed at the center of their war. When he stepped onto his porch, he found Tala sitting on the steps, her long legs folded beneath her, her presence both imposing and strangely comforting. I came to warn you, she said before he could speak. My father trusts you now, but some warriors. They question why a white rancher deserves our protection. Ethan sat beside her, staring at the vastness of the moonlit land. Do you? He asked. Tala didn't answer immediately. You gave me water, she said quietly. Water is life. In the desert no act is greater. Silence settled warm and heavy. Ethan felt her gaze on him, sharp yet soft. You said someone would come for me, he murmured. Who? Tala inhaled slowly. A group called the Silver. Spurs, outlaw ranchers. They want territory from every tribe and settler. They hunt anything that stands in their path. Ethan knew the name. Everyone did. They were ruthless, men who carved their own laws into the land. Why chase you? Ethan asked. Tala stiffened. I was scouting their movements. I got too close. The thought of her being hunted made Ethan's stomach twist. Then we need to prepare, he said. They won't stop, Tala nodded. My father will send warriors by dawn, but I was sent here first. To keep watch over you tonight, Ethan blinked. You? She smirked faintly. Do you think I cannot protect you? He raised his hands in surrender. Didn't say that, just wasn't expecting company. Tala's expression shifted, becoming thoughtful. You helped me without hesitation. Let me repay you. A weight lifted from Ethan's chest, not relief, not safety, but something steadier, trust. She stood, towering slightly over him, and scanned the dark plains. They will come soon, she murmured. The desert already knows. Ethan followed her gaze. Far out on the western ridge, a faint glimmer flickered, then vanished. Lanterns, riders, coming closer. Tala's jaw tightened. It begins. Ethan exhaled, feeling the last remnants of his old life slip away. He wasn't just a rancher anymore. He was a man with warriors at his back, and a target painted on his land. Dawn broke with a sky the color of blood-orange fire. Before the sun fully rose, the Apache warriors arrived, silent phantoms riding in disciplined lines. They took up positions around the ranch, their movements coordinated like the weaving of an ancient pattern. Tala stood at the center, issuing concise commands in her native tongue, her voice steady and sharp as flint. Ethan watched her with a new understanding, not just a girl, not just the chief's daughter, but a warrior born from storms and tradition. When the silver spurs finally appeared, dust rose behind them like a stampede. There were at least 20 riders, each armed with rifles and greed. Their leader, Hank Maddox, a man with cold blue eyes and a reputation soaked in cruelty, rode forward with a smirk. "Well, well," he drawled. "Didn't expect you to have company." "Cole." Ethan stepped forward despite the tremor in his chest. "You're trespassing on my land, Maddox. Turn around." Maddox laughed, a hollow sound. "Your land? Everything west of the ridge is ours now. You've got something else we want too. That Apache girl." Tala raised her chin, unafraid. "Come and take me," she said. Maddox grinned. "Gladly?" Before he could give the order, 3 Apache spears struck the ground inches from his horse's hooves. Warriors emerged from the brush, arrows notched, rifles aimed, eyes burning like embers. Maddox cursed. "You brought an army?" Ethan didn't move. "They protect their own." The 2 sides faced off. The air charged like lightning preparing to strike. Maddox lifted his rifle. "If it's war you want," he never finished. Tala's command split the air like thunder. "Haguni!" Apache warriors surged, not firing wildly but with precise, devastating coordination. Maddox's men panicked, firing in disarray. Horses reared. Sand erupted. Ethan ducked behind a trough as bullets tore splinters from his porch. Tala fought like a tempest, her movements a blur, disarming one rider, knocking another from his horse, her strength undeniable. Ethan grabbed his rifle and fired warning shots, helping where he could, heart pounding as the world became dust and chaos. When Maddox tried to flee, Ethan blocked his path. The outlaw sneered. "You're siding with savages?" Ethan steadied his rifle. "I'm siding with the people who saved me." Maddox lunged, but a shadow fell across. Him, Tala, who slammed him off, his horse, and pinned him with a single arm. The battle ended as quickly as it began. The silver spurs scattered, defeated, leaving Maddox writhing in the dirt. Ethan looked around at the warriors, at Tala, at the land still trembling from violence. He realized he had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. He had chosen a side, and fate had chosen him. The aftermath settled slowly, like dust finding its place after a long storm. The Apache gathered the wounded, tended to their own with herbs and whispered songs. Ethan stood beside Tala, watching as the warriors secured the perimeter in case the silver spurs regrouped. The sun climbed, casting long shadows that seemed to bind the ranch to the tribe like threads of destiny. Tala approached Ethan, her braids loose, her expression softer than he'd ever seen it. "You fought," she said quietly. "Not many would stand against Maddox," Ethan sighed. "Didn't have a choice." "You did," she replied. "And you chose us." Something in her gaze warmed him from the inside out. The chief arrived, his steps heavy with the weight of leadership. He surveyed his warriors, then looked at Ethan. "You have honored your bond," he declared. "Today you stood with my people, and your courage speaks louder than any words." Ethan bowed his head slightly. "Your warriors saved my life. I owed them the same." The chief nodded. "The debt between us is paid." Ethan felt a strange pang in his chest, relief mixed with disappointment. Something inside him didn't want this connection to end. Tala shifted beside him, her voice hesitant. "Father, the land is still threatened. Maddox will return with more men." The chief's jaw tightened. "He will, but the boy has fulfilled his duty." Ethan looked at Tala. "Is that what you want? For this to be over?" Her eyes met his, deep as canyon shadows. "I don't know," she whispered. The chief raised a hand. "We will return to our lands by dawn. Cole may choose to stand with us again when danger comes, but no obligation binds him." He turned to leave, but Tala lingered, her eyes lingering on Ethan as though searching for an answer he hadn't yet spoken. She touched his arm lightly. "You were brave today," she said. "Not for yourself, for all of us." The warmth of her hand burned through him. Ethan exhaled slowly. "I couldn't let anything happen to you." Tala's breath caught. Her gaze softened, lips parting slightly. But before either could speak, a warrior called her name. Duty reclaimed her. She stepped back, her voice low. "We will see each other again. The desert isn't finished with us." She walked away, tall and fierce, leaving Ethan's heart echoing the words she hadn't said. He knew the danger wasn't over. He also knew the bond between them had deepened, past debt, past honor. into something unspoken, fragile and powerful. Night fell with the quiet intensity of embers cooling after a long blaze. The Apache camped the night on Ethan's land, forming a protective ring, not out of obligation, but respect. Ethan stood on his porch, watching the flickering glow of their fires, feeling the desert shift around him with a strange sense of belonging. Tala approached him once more, moving with the calm of someone who had made peace with the day's chaos. "Tomorrow we leave," she said softly. Ethan nodded, though something inside him tightened at the thought. "Your father said the debt is paid." "It is," she confirmed. "But not everything between us is measured in debts." Her words hung in the air, fragile and heavy. Ethan swallowed. "I don't want any of this to be the end." Tala stepped closer, her tall frame casting a long shadow across him. "My people will always stand with those who honor life. You did more than save me. You stood with us. That doesn't end." She looked out into the night, then back at him. "The Silver Spurs will return. They will not accept defeat." Ethan nodded grimly. "Then I'll be ready." Her eyes softened. "You won't face them alone." Silence stretched, warm and full of unspoken meaning. Ethan reached out, hesitating only a heartbeat before touching her hand. She didn't pull away. Instead, she interlaced her fingers with his, gentle, but strong as the desert wind. "What happens now?" Ethan asked quietly. Tala's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "No, we walk the same path. Whatever storms come." Behind her, the chief watched them from afar, not with disapproval, but with the understanding of a man who recognized two fates tying themselves together. The night deepened. Coyotes sang in the distance. The land breathed. Ethan felt something shift inside him, something that told him he no longer belonged to the quiet life he once knew. He was a bridge now, between tribes, between worlds, between war and peace. As the first stars shimmered overhead, Tala squeezed his hand, grounding him in the moment. "Rest tonight," she whispered. "Tomorrow you become part of our story, and we become part of yours." Ethan exhaled, a long breath filled with certainty. Whatever battles waited beyond the horizon, he would not face them alone. The desert had called him into its oldest truth. Where water is shared, life and destiny are forever bound.